And now I'm thrilled to invite Lynn Barnett to the stage with a speech titled, Finding Lightness in Dark Times. Lynn Barnett, Finding Lightness in Dark Times.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I think in order to define inner greatness, we need to first define outer greatness. For me, that would be what we see on TV, like firefighters rescuing people from a burning building. I don't have that kind of courage, but I think we all have some inner greatness that just needs an external force or source to spark, with no pun intended, that inner greatness. For me, that inner greatness came out when my husband and I took care of my mom for 5 years when she had Alzheimer's. I never thought that my mom would get Alzheimer's, nor that our lives would be upended by it, but I had to remind myself that neither did she on either count. I wrote a book chronicling this time called My Mother Has Alzheimer's and My Dog Has Tapeworms, A Caregiver's Tale. I thought of the title when I realized that this broad's once broad life was reduced to the pressing health concerns of my mom and dog. Speaking of the latter, when I practiced my speeches about the book, our dog would often look at me and nod as if she were nodding in approval, but other times she was nodding off and snoring, no less. So I hope I don't make you do that. I've entitled this speech, Finding Light in Dark Times. My mom knew the value of lightness, of humor, especially in the face of dark times. When she had a mammogram, or as I like to call it, a mommogram, would show cancer, she had the recommended surgery. When her friends would ask her how she was feeling, she'd say, I feel fine. I just take lousy pictures. If she could find humor in her cancer diagnosis, I could follow suit when it came to her Alzheimer's diagnosis. To that end, I wrote the book with humor and heart. Sometimes inner greatness means standing up for yourself, even when you're sitting down. So if you're sitting down in the dentist chair and they start to numb the wrong side of your mouth, even if your gum is numb, speak up. Equally as important is knowing when not to speak up, like when a driver cuts you off. Physical and mental restraint keep you in the driver's seat. My mom liked being in the driver's seat, but when Alzheimer's took over, she was reluctant to let me take over the driving. I have a chapter entitled Karma, C-A-R, capital M-A, and Karma, K-A-R-M-A, because luckily the latter intervened and her car became disabled. One of the keys to inner greatness is knowing when to take away the keys. My husband didn't have to deal with that with his Alzheimer's-ridden mom because she didn't drive, but she could drive me crazy. One day we were visiting her in her assisted living facility, and she pointed to me and then told him to get that heifer out of here. I didn't say anything then and there, but when we got back to the car, my inner something came out, boy. I told him that X number of extra pounds does not a heifer make. And even if they did, it was a rude thing for her to say. Then he explained her diluted and diluted mindset, that she sometimes thought he was her husband, her late husband, but she forgot that fact, and that he was having an affair with me. And heifer was her term for that kind of a woman. So in her mind, I wasn't a pudgy woman. I was the other woman. And I said, oh, gee, thanks. Now, isn't that sad that I'd rather be known as a homewrecker than as a woman with a middle-age spread? That's what society does to us, or sometimes what we do to ourselves. Later that week, my husband and I are watching Jeopardy, and the clue was a cow whose spelling defies the I before E rule. I before E except after C or when sounded as A, as a neighbor away. And it's heifer, H-E-I-F-E-R. And I'm screaming at the set, heifer, heifer, heifer. I don't think the contestants knew it, but I knew it. Part of inner greatness is knowing when to put things behind you. And you'll be happy to know that I've put heifer behind me. Just ask my hips. Inner greatness sometimes involves leaving your comfort zone. In another book I wrote, and I'll show that, What Patients Want, Anecdotes and Advice, I mentioned that we've gone from BYOB, bring your own beverage, to BYOA, either bring or be your own advocate, so you can advocate for yourself and others. If ever I was going to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk regarding the latter, it was in a surgeon's waiting room where a patient passed out and no one was helping them. I walked up to the receptionist's window and uncharacteristically for me, I banged on that window and screamed, important to get her attention, and she was able to get help right away. My husband also had inner greatness. We had gone to see the play Beautiful about the singer-songwriter Carole King. There was a special needs child behind me who'd kick my seat every so often. Sensing how hard it must have been for the parents, I tried to ignore it. During intermission, my husband offered to change seats with me, but he didn't say why. I thought he just wanted a different view of the stage, so we switched. As we were driving home, I told him about the actions of the child behind me, and he said that's why he changed seats with me. He made that nice gesture without making a big deal over it. Now, wasn't that beautiful? I think I got my inner greatness from both of my parents, who grew up during the Depression, but far from that causing depression in either of them, I think they developed strength from within, from doing without. The one thing that no one thought my mom would have to do without was her brain. I had to compensate by using my brain to not blame her for her Alzheimer's-induced agitation. I tried not to have cross words with her, but I did do crosswords, as in crossword puzzles. How appropriate, since Alzheimer's can be a puzzling disease. I learned to think on my feet, but I tried to think with my heart as well. This was especially true when my mom had Alzheimer's-induced auditory hallucinations, when the one voice she really needed to hear was mine. One day, she was insistent that someone was knocking on her bedroom door. My convenient fib was that I was doing laundry, and she must have heard the washer lid go up and down when I was transferring clothes to the dryer. I was a liar, liar, pants and dryer. Later that night, she again asked, "Who's that knocking on my door?" It reminded me of the old TV show Mama's Family, where the title character would ask the same thing. I was my mama's family, and there was no one knocking on her door. The knock-knock was in her head. I know you're thinking that begs for a knock-knock joke. So here's one for thought, rather than for a belly laugh. I know you'll know your part. Knock-knock. Doctor. Doctor Who, the fictional character, said, "In the end, all our lives are just stories. We may as well make them a good one, eh?" That's what I tried to do here and in the books. My mom must have had a good story within her. One day she was counting, as she often did, I think because the math part of her brain remained strong while other parts disintegrated. This particular day, she said, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the end of my story.